I think it's clear to everyone that music is everywhere. It is in our stores, it's in our movies and shows, it is even in the places that we worship. There is nowhere in our lives that it seems music has not found a way to get its foot in the door. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, it seems like a very inherent thing to human beings that we adore music. That we almost need it. It's almost like food for our soul, and I think it's been described that way. And you can see this in the fact that there is music in every culture. Music is different from culture to culture, and sometimes the themes of these musics can differ by cultures. But the fact that we need something like music in our lives shows just how important it is to us. It's almost as important as food and water. But just like we have to distinguish between different kinds of drink, different kinds of food, there is food that's good for us, food that's bad for us. There are vegetables, there are meats, there is water, there is soda, there is wine. We distinguish between these things and we quarantine them to particular moments in our life. So we quarantine these to different parts of our lives, to different events, to different things like that, because we know that they are good within these boundaries. And it's the same case with music. Now, I'm not going to distinguish between music such as rock, rap, classical, any of these. I'm not distinguishing that. But I am going to make a distinction between two forms of music that are very important and I think a lot of people lose track of. Secular music and sacred music. Now, to understand this distinction, we first need to understand, what does sacred mean? We use it, we think of it as being holiness, goodness, maybe even godliness, like something that only God is. Like some people describe God as being the only holy one, which is true in a sense. But when you look at the word sacred and its use through scriptures and its use, especially as Catholics, within the Catholic Church, what we mean by holy is something that is set apart for a special purpose. In this case, especially as Catholics, for God. And that's how it was used in the Bible. Like you read in the Old Testament, Israel was a holy nation. That doesn't mean that they were upright, that they were good, and that they always behaved good. Obviously not, because there were many times that they fell away, where they followed other gods, where they did evil things, even up to their king, King Saul, and even King David with Bathsheba. So by understanding holy to mean set apart for God, whenever we talk about sacred spaces, places set apart for worship or prayer of God, like a church. And also, when we talk about sacred music, which, if you use my definition I just provided, would tell you that this is music set apart entirely for God. And that is an important distinction, because you can't intermingle the sacred and the secular. This is akin to the weaving of the different fabrics together in the Old Testament. It was a symbol of Israel being holy, set apart, and in the same sense, their clothing needed to be of a uniform fabric. And in the same sense, our worship needs to be of a uniform fabric. Our speech needs to be of uniform fabric. And so I think I'll start with that one right there, sacred speech, and how it relates to sacred music. Sacred speech or sacred language is something I think we've kind of lost the distinction of. And I think part of the problem with that is after Vatican II, they transitioned out of using Latin in the liturgy, which was not necessarily their intention, but as the council was implemented, it gradually and sometimes instantly removed Latin from the liturgy and from our Catholic lives. And for us, Latin is a sacred language. It is the sacred language of the Roman Church. And after that fact, they didn't include more sacred forms of English. Instead, they tried to go for as modern of English as they could do. And there are still people that try to do this. But I think it does away with this distinction between secular and sacred language that is really unhealthy, because when we talk to God, it should not be the way we speak to other people. It should not be the way that we talk in everyday life. It should not be mundane. Instead, it should be sacred. It should be holy. It should be set apart. And one way of doing this is with a sacred language. Now, there are some examples of sacred languages that are well known, such as Latin, Greek, specifically, I believe Koine Greek is what they call it, Church Slavonic, Coptic, which is the descendant of the Egyptian language. But even in English, we have a form of English that is sacred. And some people might call this Shakespeare English. It is called Early Modern English. You might know it by the use of thou art, like our Father who art in heaven. This is an example of sacred language that is still understandable to your everyday English speaker. So sacred language does not mean foreign language that nobody speaks anymore. It just means a language that is set apart for God and only God in your life or in the life of the church. And that is easier to achieve with a dead language like Latin or Church Slavonic or Ancient Greek or Coptic, is because nobody is using them in everyday speech, so they can be used solely for liturgical use, for prayer use. And in that way, they can help orient our minds and our souls towards God, because we know when we speak this language or this manner of speaking that we are talking to God. However, sacred speech, moving away from sacred language as a particular, sacred speech does not consist solely of vocabulary and grammar. It also has to do with our manner of speaking. So this would have to do with musicalness. For example, if you've ever been to a mass where the priest has chanted the mass, or at least where the priest chants the preface, you will have noticed when he chants, it's not quite music. It uses a lot of the same notes with little bits changing at the end. That is because this is not music. It's musical. It's not music, it's musical. And that is an important distinction, because the intention of the priest is not to create music that is pleasing to our ears or anything like that. His intention is to speak in a special, sacred way to God, in a way that is only used when we are speaking to God. And that's actually the origin of chant. It was not meant to be music, necessarily. It was meant to be a special way of talking to God. And we still use that in the church today when priests chant the Mass. Now, I think in some sense we've lost sight of that, because rather than saying, what music is set apart for prayer that I can use at Mass, more often than not, people will say, what music do I like that I can use for prayer? And I think it has pure intentions, but I think it's missing the mark. And I think that needs to be pointed out. And the fact that the very foundation of chant is to be a way of talking to God should inform the way we use chant and music in Mass. Now, music for the entrance, the offertory, these are meant to be music, but they should still be rooted in that sense of prayer, in sacredness. They should not be rooted in a sense of solely of what sounds nice. It should sound nice. It absolutely should. That's why it's musical. Music sounds nice to us. But you shouldn't just use something because it sounds nice. You need to look at the sacredness of it. And in that sense, the musical form itself should be sacred. The words should be sacred. The form should be sacred. Perhaps even the instruments should be sacred. I don't want to weigh one way or the other on that. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the use of certain instruments or not. And this fact can be conveyed in a very simple way with the phrase, singing is praying twice. And this is the case because not only are you offering up the prayer itself in the words, you're offering up the prayer in the way you are speaking. And moving on from that, who should make this music for us? Who should play this music? Who should lead this music? It shouldn't just be anybody. And it shouldn't be just anybody with any musical talent. Now, do they need to be perfect? Absolutely not. Do they need to have the right intention? Yes. That is what we need to look for when it comes to who we choose to lead our music at Mass. And that's because music is a very serious business. I think a lot of people, they don't give it a lot of thought. Now, maybe the people who lead music do, but I think most people don't give music at Mass a lot of thought. But it is very serious, because the kind of music we choose, the sacredness of it, of its words, the content as well, helps orient us in Mass towards God or possibly away from God, depending on what we choose and how we implement it. And I think we know this even from the way we dress when we go to Mass. We are meant to dress nice. Now, again, there's another movement in today's society where you don't need to dress nice because it's thought of as being vain. It's meant to look nice for other people. But the purpose of dressing nice isn't necessarily to look good for other people. It's to indicate to yourself and to others that this is a special occasion. At weddings, we dress nice, not just to look nice, but to indicate this is a special occasion. When we celebrate things, we tend to dress a certain way. We don't dress just any way. We understand that there is a need to indicate this externally, that there is something special happening. And that's one reason I love being Catholic, is because of how physical our religion is. We dress a certain way when we go to Mass. Our Mass itself contains so many physical aspects to it, from the way we stand, kneel, sit, hold our hands, the way we receive physical bread and wine, which is actually Jesus' body and blood. The fact that we have images of saints and God, this physicalness to our religion is beautiful. And that extends even to our music, which is it's not just music. It's the very thing that helps orient our souls. And it's for that reason that I think we need to take this seriously and sit down and really think about the way we are implementing music at Mass. I'm not saying I necessarily know the answer, but I am saying we need to take it seriously. Thank you so much for watching. I am a very opinionated person, and if I said anything wrong, which I guarantee I did, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Please be respectful. I'll be respectful back, of course. And I'm planning on doing more of these. If you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, just let me know in the comments. And I have a few already lined up, so if I have already figured that out, I might not respond. Don't take that to mean that I'm ignoring you. I'm just not wanting to reveal anything, you know what I mean? Again, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you.